We are going to find out what the best variant in all of Type Stil is in this video. If you guys have any differing opinions or any questions, make sure to comment them below. And before we start the video, like always, make sure to like and subscribe because I'm trying to hit 4K subs by the end of the month. Let's get right into it. Our very first variant we're going to be going over is actually True Vastocar, and this is the very first true variant that I personally got, and back then I'm pretty sure it was actually the strongest, but after a lot of buffs, in my opinion, it has gotten quite weaker. But let's go over all of the variants. So it has 3 different variants: the hero variant, which is the best one and the one you guys are seeing on screen right now. It has the HP regen variant and the dodge variant. Dodge variant allows you to gain an extra dodge for as long as your character has a blue outline on them. This is really good, but the main issue is the way you get your dodge back. It refreshes every single time you land your Zero Oscuras, which is basically the beam move you get as a Vasto. For this reason, most people consider dodge variant pretty trash because for the most time, you're not really going to be landing the Zero Oscuras. It's a relatively difficult move to land and you can easily dodge it or block it. As for the HP variant, this is pretty solid, I would say, just because, you know, it's a constant HP buff and you don't need to activate mode. But the main issue with this variant is the fact that your HP is not really going to be noticeable when you regenerate it, and you do gain another HP regen every single time you land Oscuras, but that's a difficult move to land, and the HP regen is like 2% every single time you land it, so it's still pretty trash. The final variant and the best variant is Hero, and that's the one that I have. This is the variant that I got really lucky for landing on my very first time. You get a 15% damage or defense buff every single time, a 10% damage buff, and your Zero Oscuras has hyper armor. The hyper armor actually makes it relatively easy to hit Oscuras, but unfortunately the other two don't get it, so they will not be having as much of an easy time landing Oscuras. Overall, True Vasto isn't bad, and you could definitely argue for it being number 2, not number 1, I would say. And the buffs are relatively minimal, but since you don't need to activate a mode for them, they are constantly active, which is why I would say it isn't trash, but there's definitely better options, and for that reason, I'm definitely going to have to put Vasto at number 3. Let's move on to the next variant. Alright boys, now we're on to the Quincy. So True Letz, in my opinion, is the second best mode in the entire game. The worst variant for True Letz has to be the blood variant. You gain a buff to your blood vein and artery, and it just increases the amount you get, so it lasts longer. And I'm not 100% sure if it buffs it, but if it does, I would still put it in this same place. You could argue it for being better than Siphon, but still, it's not that good. The Quincy Arrow also gains hyper armor. Overall, the main reason this variant is at the bottom of the 3 variants is the fact that every Quincy gets blood vein and artery, and it regens as well, so having that extra amount doesn't really make a whole big difference, and it wouldn't really give you a big advantage. The Siphon variant lets you restore Ryatsu for every damage you deal. This is pretty solid, especially for speed builds, because it drains a lot of Ryatsu, and when you reach a certain number of stacks, you let out a Ryatsu push. I personally haven't used this, but I feel like this might also end up ruining some combos. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure if this variant just steals Ryatsu or if it regenerates it for you, but either way, it would still be around the same position. It's a solid variant, and it would definitely give you a decent advantage over your opponent, but I would still recommend rolling it for the next variant, which is Boost. So Boost gives you a buff for your Ryatsu regen, a damage buff, a speed buff, and a speed buff. So all of those things make the Boost incredibly overpowered, and it just outclasses everything. I am pretty sure the buffs in each category aren't major. It's relatively minimal, but it still gives you so much buffs that I had no choice to put it at number 1. And honestly speaking, Boost might honestly make True Letz number 1, but I feel like the next one, which is Vizard, is slightly better. So let's move on to Vizard. But yeah. Alright, now we're on to Vizard. So this has 5 different variants, and upon achieving Vizard by using a True Hog, you can actually get 3 of those variants. If you get the right variant, so the best one, Vizard is incredibly busted. If you get the worst, it can still honestly compete for a spot in first place on this list. So let's go over all the variants for Vizard real quick. The worst variant, in my opinion, has to be the speed variant. You just get a buff to your flash steps, and it isn't that good. And also, just to add on, this is literally just dodge variant without a dodge, and you just get 2 extra things. So honestly, this already outclasses a Rankar. Anyways, the defense and damage variant are about the same, to be honest. Defense just gives you a 10% defense buff, and damage just gives you a 10% damage buff. Nothing crazy, but it's still super nice to have on any build. The Ryatsu regen variant is one of my favorites. This gives you a buff to your Ryatsu damage, or Ryatsu regen, and compared to the boost variant for True Letz, it's super noticeable and incredibly overpowered. For example, on my Benny Human build, the one you guys are seeing, my moves drain a lot of Ryatsu, and when I have Vizard active, I am able to spam the heck out of all of my moves, and I don't really get punished whatsoever. The HP regen variant is super nice as well, and in my opinion, unlike the Rankar HP regen, this isn't it's still not super noticeable, but it's noticeable to the point where it makes an impact throughout a long fight. And the best part is you don't really need to suffer any other disadvantages because you can still get 2 other variants. So in my opinion, the most optimal variant combo for True Vizard would be HP Ryatsu and either damage or defense. But as long as you're running HP and Ryatsu, you're honestly going to be completely fine. And for that reason, I would have to say True Vizard is the very best variant out of all 3 of them. If you guys disagree, let me know in the comments below, but make sure to like and subscribe. Have a great day and goodbye.